Benzema, here he is with a chance, and this is a goal!
Salut, je suis Karim Benzema et tu écoutes le podcast FIFA.
Hello and welcome to a festive FIFA 12 podcast. May your ding-dong merrily upon high. And I'll tell you what, we've even got a little man dressed up as an elf. But before we join him, allow me to introduce myself. I am, as ever, Stevie Morgan. And joining me, the little elf from across the water. A man who turned his back on his native England and decamped elsewhere like some sort of gangster that runs away to the Costa del Sol to see out his remaining days evading capture from the forces of law and order. It's Romilly Broad. Romilly, that's a hell of an intro.
Yes, it is.
Okay, there. We're only in the podcast for maybe 30 seconds, and already we've had the first throat clearance. You are, as I've just said, dressed up as a little elf, because you are, if you don't mind me saying so, looking very festive.
Thank you very much. I do try my best. And, you know, you're eerily accurate, actually, when you point out that most of Santa's elves are, in fact, cons on the run. And obviously the Arctic is one of the places where they can feel most secure. And they can basically just take their hauls of robbed cash and loot and take it to the Arctic. And, of course, that's how Santa indeed funds his toy manufacturing operation.
And on that festive note, let me tell you what's coming up in a packed, pulsating, and dare I say it, pugnacious podcast. Today we bring back Podcast Extra, where Romilly Broad will be talking exclusively to Mike Takla, game designer of FIFA Street. We hear what you do when you lose in the last minute of a game, and in the Big Shout we ask what's been your footballing highlight of 2011. There's been a few low lights as well, but no doubt we'll cover that as well. But first, as ever, Romilly Broad, we ask you, our little festive elf, to share with us the FIFA news as you empty your sack of news.
Thanks. Do you know what the most exciting thing we've got going on, at least from a commercial point of view, is?
Tell me, Rom.
FIFA Street pre-order is now available. And from anyone who works at EA who enjoys selling stuff or marketing stuff, this is a really big deal. But hopefully, actually, there's a bit of value in here for people who are going to buy the game as well. Which hopefully will be lots and lots of people.
Really, Rom? Tell us more.
So I've got this idea. I've got a press release in front of me. This is like fresh off the press, this thing. I've just printed it. It's still warm. I thought I could just read it.
Go for it.
Yeah? All right.
Tell us, because I think this is the first time we've really properly discussed FIFA Street.
Well, yes, and this pre-order is entirely relevant to lots of people. So here we go. December 21, 2011. EA Sports announced today that it is celebrating the transfer signing of Barcelona and Argentina's superstar Lionel Messi with a special pre-order incentive for FIFA Street. Fans who pre-order FIFA Street from leading retailers around the world will receive exclusive in-game access to an all-star team featuring Messi and 12 of the greatest footballers in the world.
Such as?
Such as Benzema, Kaká, and other Adidas-type world football stars. Anyway, that team, if you pre-order FIFA Street, will be unlocked for you in the game. And that's very good. But that's not all.
Oh, yes.
I'm telling you. Lionel Messi himself actually sat down with us, with the game designers, and helped us to design an arena, I should say, in the game. And that is something that you can access also via the pre-order route. It's called the Plaça de Catalunya, and it's inspired by the sort of FIFA Street, environments that you would find people playing in Barcelona and that part of the world, and the sort of place where a lot of Barcelona's young talent emerge from, in fact. And he's helped to design that venue, which will be one of the venues in the game, and you can only get it by pre-ordering the game as well.
But as you say, Ron, yeah, it's that kind of urban environment that produced so many of the great players we see now on the very highest stage of world football.
Yeah, exactly. And the only way to get that stuff is by doing this. So there you go. It's quite nice. The press release probably isn't the most exciting way to sell it. But we hope it will, be sold anyway, if you see what I mean.
Hey, you're going to get to play in an arena designed by Lionel Messi.
Yes. Well, not completely designed by him.
Not
obviously
completely
he's not
designed.
an architect.
Rom, don't shatter the whole illusion.
Well,
I'm trying to big it up slightly. It is preferable than playing in an arena designed by you or I. I mean, remember when you and I used to play football in the street? We no longer do that now, of course, but remember it would be possibly in a cul-de-sac, and the ball would be bouncing off the window screen of parked cars. And you'd run away before Mr. Bartholomew came out and confiscated your ball.
Yes, exactly.
Have I revealed a bit too much about myself there?
No, but it's true. That's. In fact, what we should do is talk to the FIFA Street designers and say that there needs to be, special button combos that in order to get your ball back from someone's back garden, and there should be also every now and then in the background, just in the in the background audio, stadium announcer type style, whatever. There should be your mum calling you for dinner.
That's a great idea. Hey, you know what? That's where we take it for the next level.
Yeah.
We go urban in England, and then we're going to take it into the ball going into the next door's garden, you having to go round there, knock up the old lady, so to speak, who lives there, to get your ball back. Anyway, look, we're getting bogged down in something that isn't particularly relevant to FIFA Street. But however, exciting news there, Rom, and don't forget, it is a time for giving, and nobody knows that better than you, and perhaps this is the ideal opportunity to place that pre-order for FIFA Street. Now, Romilly, on a serious note,
yes.
I've got a message here that says Romilly Broad's second news item, as he unloads his sack of news, is be vigilant.
Well, yes, that's true. So over the last week or two, we've had incidents of people getting their accounts compromised, and this is specifically in FIFA Ultimate Team. Now, the first thing I'd like to say is that getting your account compromised is nowhere near as prevalent as people might suspect, and that's because there's a lot of noise around it. It's not actually as rampant as you may think. But anyway, there are people out there who are doing various nefarious things to get hold of people's accounts. Now, this is a message that's mainly aimed at actually people who are very successful at Ultimate Team, where they may find themselves on the leaderboards, for example, or maybe they're into broadcasting their stuff on YouTube or on Twitch TV or whatever it is. There are quite a few people out there who do that sort of thing, and therefore make themselves highly visible as successful players of Ultimate Team. And what that does is make them targets for these bandits and criminals who would like very much to get their hands on your hard-earned in-game items and coins and so on. So I guess I just wanted to address that, because over the last few days we've had a few of these guys finding themselves hacked, as they call it. Obviously, there is actual technical hacking is not part of this. This is more like a social engineering con trick where they people obtain certain bits of information that they can then use to go and secure your account through other means. So it's we are working on that. That's the first part of the message I wanted to get out here, is that we're working at it. We're reviewing everything that we're doing, and we're going to be looking at what we can do technically to make things more secure. But aside from that, the other message is, if you think that you might be a target, if you're very good at FUT and you're in the leaderboards, or if you're someone that other people might know has got quite a lot of good stuff in Ultimate Team, you need to do some things to protect yourself. That is very much the first step to preventing this stuff happening. And one of the best things you can do, if you're afraid of this happening to you, is to create a new email account that's completely unique, completely secret, not identifiable in any way, and use that as your email address associated with your FUT account, and then never tell anybody what that email address is. Simple as that, because the first thing they need is your email address. And then there's other information that you should be very careful about as well, such as your date of birth or any other identifiable personal information that people might be able to use and claim to be you. So one of the principal ways that these guys get hold of that stuff is by friending you on Facebook. Now, if you're a guy that likes to broadcast stuff on YouTube, for example, then you've probably got lots of friends and you're adding them all the time on Facebook. If you haven't protected those little bits of personal information about yourself, such as your email address or your date of birth, that means they have that information and they can then use that in their armory of tools to come and try and get control of your stuff. So lock everything down, create a top secret email address, and only use that for Ultimate Team. You can obviously use your normal email address for everything else you want to do, but create a new one just for Ultimate Team that no one will know. And that's the best way to keep yourself safe. And I just wanted to get that message out, really. On the other hand, of course, as I say, we're looking very, very carefully at the whole situation. We're banning people left, right and centre, by the way, so no one actually ends up getting away with this, if we can help it at all. But while we're doing that, protect yourself.
Well, Romilly Broad, I think that's a very valid and indeed worthy comment, and it's worth not only for the legions of regular people listening to the podcast and have been playing FIFA for many, many years, but of course it's relevant to those newcomers that perhaps will have picked up FIFA for the first time this time of year, and they have treated themselves or had it as a gift, and it's those sort of things that are always worth reminding newcomers and the more veteran gamers among us as well.
Yes, indeed. So look out for yourself, and then we'll do our best to look out for you as well. That's basically it.
Thank you, Rom. And I think that's a message that applies to everyone, whether you're a newcomer to FIFA. Remember, this time of year, people will be picking up the game perhaps for the first time, or indeed those that have been playing it for quite some time. But Romilly Broad there, not only an elf, but also something of a gaming sage. And as I'd say, there are people listening to us, perhaps for the first time. Remember, Rom, as I've said to you many, many times before, this is global. This is going all around the world. So people are picking us up, for the first time all around the world. And as you know, I'm bilingual. Are you? Yes, indeed. So there are many, many languages. I haven't got time to say them all, say hello now in all of them. But what I will say, if you do want to get in contact with us, there are a number of ways that you can do so. You can email us at backofthenet@ea.com. You can contact us on our Facebook page or indeed on Twitter. That's EA Sports FIFA. And we always enjoy hearing from you all, whatever it may be. We've got some interesting correspondence coming up in just a moment. But we mentioned a second ago, Rom, that we have at the end of this podcast the return of Podcast Extra. It's like the Apocalypse Now redux of podcasts, This is always something extra tagged on to the end. And this time around, Romilly Broad has been talking to Mike Takla, who's one of the game designers behind FIFA Street. You will be able to hear that interview in depth at the end of the podcast. But here's a sample of the kind of probing question that Romilly Broad confronted him with.
Hello, Mike.
Hi.
Who are you?
I'm one of the designers on the new FIFA Street, which is coming out next year.
Street football itself it's always been a big thing, and therefore you're going to want something that reflects your own experience of what that means, depending on where you are in the world and stuff. So the concept was very much to go back and replicate that, I guess. So how did you kick that process off?
Yeah, well, we looked at the various ways people play street football, or mini games of football, basically. Some people play 1 versus 1, some people play 5-a-side, some people play 6 versus 6. We also did a bit of research into futsal, which is it's basically a Brazilian version of 5-a-side, where they play with a smaller ball that's a little bit heavier. And that's grown in popularity a lot in the last few years, so that was something we wanted to include. There's games, for example, in the Netherlands. They have a game they call Panna, which is I think Dutch for nutmeg, where basically you beat your opponent by humiliating them. putting the ball through their legs, doing tricks around them, and you'll earn points from that. So yeah, basically, like you say, we sat around the table and talked about, everyone's different experiences of what they consider street football to be.
Yeah.
Where you play street football. So whereas in FIFA Street 3 you might find that you're playing on an oil rig or somewhere where most people haven't played football. Yeah. In the new FIFA Street, you're playing in car parks or in the local park or in the local five-a-side centre. Yeah, kind of the vision for the game was to let the user go from playing in these environments that they'll be familiar with to growing their team to become a more professional team and starting to play in more professional environments, in stadiums, in futsal tournaments.
The marvellous Romilly Broad there talking to the equally good Mike Takla. And listen, as I said, we had some correspondence earlier, and I'll get onto that in a moment. But it was relating to this. Have a listen to this, because in the dying moments of a match, we've all had instances like this.
I'm kicking on my right wing now. 90 minutes,
That was Louis Saha there, not Romilly Broad, realising that he's late for work again. It was Everton striker Louis Saha in the closing moments of a match in a pro player tournament at Everton against Seamus Coleman. If you want to see that video, by the way, you can see it on the website, easportsfootball.com. But it got us thinking, Romilly Broad, did it not? As you and I have our regular meetings to compile the content and the ideas that are fundamental to the FIFA 12 podcast. And we said to each other, everybody's had those moments at the end of a match where time is running out and it's all over. So we asked people on Twitter to give us some of those moments. And what do you do when you know basically you're about to lose in the last minute of a match? Some an interesting array of responses. Someone here says, I used to restart the game, but now that I've grown up and matured, I just throw the controller across my room and punch my bed. Restarting the game to me is low. I mean, particularly if they're doing that before the final whistle is blown. That says, listen, it's time for you to man up, baby.
Well, that's called rage quitting, and obviously it's something that happens in FIFA a lot. People get very emotional about it, and I know from first-hand experience that when people lose, they get angry about it, and frequently, actually, when people lose in this kind of way, they blame me.
Well, I've seen. Well, to be honest, you can be blamed for a lot of things, lot of things, and again, we haven't got time to go through them all. But I saw you lose it in Cologne when FIFA 12 was unveiled to the world when I beat you. I've got a totally.
You keep dragging that up, don't you? You beat me once on a completely unfinished version of the game.
Doesn't matter.
In the middle of a games convention.
The game may be unfinished, but I am the finished article. That's what it proved to you. Someone else here says that they turned the PlayStation off at the wall. Oh yeah, it's that serious. No, that is low. I'm not having that at all. You see, even Romilly Broad, when I was beating him in Cologne, humiliating him in front of a room full of gaming journalists, some of the most preeminent gaming names in the world, watching his bruised and battered body, metaphorically speaking, succumb to my hammering. Again, I'm getting bogged down in stuff I don't want to get bogged down in. He just stood there and took it.
I couldn't find the plug socket.
Again, let's move on. Rom, have you got any other instances there of what people do when they know they're going to lose in the last moments of a game?
Yeah, we've got one guy here who says, it's like everyone's reaction. I utter a series of foul-mouthed words followed by crying and shrivelling up on the floor and asking the question why. And then there's another chap here. He says, when I lose in the last minute, I scream, throw the controller and punch myself in the leg repeatedly until it goes numb. Which I think is actually a bit of a public health warning that we should issue here. We make a game. We hope that people like it and they have fun. Yeah. What we don't want it to be doing is causing outrageous acts of self-harm.
No.
So punching your limbs until they don't work anymore is not a good reaction. Okay?
When it comes to people losing it, this fella says I punched the wall. No joke. It's like you've lost in real life. It seriously messes with your mind. Get a life, pal. You don't need to hit the wall.
Well, it depends what your wall's made out of.
Well,
if you're in a padded cell, which I happen to know is kind of where you live, you're probably all right. You can bang whatever you want off it, can't you?
Rom, it's not a padded cell. I've told you before. It's a Wendy house. It's very, very different. It's very different to a padded cell. It just so happens there are a number of doctors and nurses that do come by to visit me. Again, not really want to get bogged down in that. This fella says I'm currently on my 6th PS3 pad. Does that answer your question? Why is everybody hurting things? Stop hurting yourselves and the equipment.
Actually, that was probably one of the most common replies we got, which was, I throw my controller somewhere. There was one guy, I think, who said that he throws it out of his window. Conveniently, he's got an overgrown lawn out the back, and that's fine, because he can just go back and retrieve it. But still, the controller happens to be in your hand at the time, right? So it's targeted. Your anger is focused into that controller. Here's a trick. Have something that you don't mind breaking nearby. So, for example, if you need to carry out your vicious attack on something, make sure Stevie's nearby. That's, if you can find him, sit him next to you, and then if you need to, you've got something to hit.
Well done.
That's what I would do.
Yes, and I think you've probably saved a lot of people's frustration and them damaging lots of equipment there by suggesting
I've got an idea for a
that
bit of
they
merchandise.
hurt me. What's that? A blow up Stevie?
Do you remember those?
You can punch.
Yeah. Do you remember those Weeble things?
I thought you wanted to blow up Stevie anyway.
Well, yeah, that's a separate story. But do you remember those Weeble things? They were kind of inflatable things, but with a weight at the bottom, and you could punch them as many times as you want, and they don't.
Yeah.
They always come back. We should do one of those, but with your face on it. We've got one more, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's my favourite, actually. We've got one guy who says, I weep silently in the shower until the memory of defeat is washed away.
Happy Christmas, everybody!
Yeah. Anyway, we had a lot of entertaining responses to that, and we'd like to keep getting more of them if you want to send them our way at EA Sports FIFA on Twitter. What do you do when you lose?
Play a sting.
Hi, I'm Theo Walcott. Hi, I'm Alan Smith.
Hi, I'm Peter Chick.
Hi, I'm Tim Cahill.
I'm Jack Wilshere.
My name's Darren Bent, and you're listening to the FIFA podcast.
In a moment, the big shout. Plenty to discuss there, Rom, as ever. But first, I wanted to pick your brain about something. And that is the spate of footballers that I've seen recently. I'm not going to name names, because I don't think this is the right place to embarrass them, just in case their families listen. But the spate of footballers that I've seen recently wearing short sleeves and gloves. Now, for those of you, of course, not living in the British Isles, Romilly Broad is, of course, one of those people, because as I said earlier at the start of this podcast, he turned his back on this country. But it has got a little bit chilly of recent days, and we're seeing a lot of footballers wearing these short sleeves and gloves combos. Ron, what do you think?
I think it does look a bit silly. And I wish I could remember who it was at the weekend who was doing just that. It might have been Nani or something. I can't remember. Anyway, but yes, it looks a bit silly because it contradicts itself visually. In that if you're feeling a bit nippy, if you're feeling the cold a little bit, perhaps you are originally from a warmer country and you're not quite, comfortable in the British winter time when it's generally wet and cold, you'd cover up. You'd wear long sleeves. If you're going to wear gloves.
Do you know there was a spate a while ago of players actually wearing tights under their shorts?
Tights?
Yeah.
Full length tights?
Yeah, tights. Or it may have been like tights? An all-in-one, I don't know, like body thing. I don't know.
Maybe it was one of those suits that the swimmers wear.
Yeah, it might have been.
To make them go faster.
It might have been. But, I'm becoming quite perturbed about it, Ron, because as you know, I'm a man's man, not in the way you think, but I like to see men who can go out there and play football and won't succumb to the gloves, won't succumb to the tights, and certainly Rom will not succumb to the snood.
The snood, actually thinking about it, that it could be worse. They've abandoned that now, pretty much, haven't they? It's been kind of banned. Well, has it been banned, or they've just realised how ridiculous it looks?
I don't know. Maybe it's because Tevez hasn't been playing for a while.
Yeah, it could be that. The wearing of gloves with short sleeves is not as offensive as that. It's just a little bit odd, and it makes them look like they're a bit, weak.
Exactly, Ron.
Yeah. Anyway, on the plus side, of course, you can reflect the wearing of gloves in FIFA 12, and have always been able to. Really, it's an item you can unlock for your pro, and at least we're being authentic, I guess.
Yes. Unfortunate, but yes, authentic. Anyway, Rom, we're going to get stuck in to the big talking point of the week in a big shout.
It's the chance for you to have your say in this week's Big Shout.
And in the big shout, we are asking, what's your footballing highlight of 2011? Romilly Broad, what would yours be?
It's a bit vague, this one, but obviously as a Liverpool fan, my highlight is the return of King Kenny and the turnaround that brought around, and the resolution of the crisis at the top of Liverpool and everything. It was a really big year for Liverpool, and that was the undoubted highlight for me. As a casual spectator, though, it was probably the Arsenal-Newcastle game.
Oh yeah, fantastic. I think on a personal note, it's got to be Southampton promoted and Southampton at the top of the Championship as we approach the Christmas season. On a wider level, I'd have to say Stoke making it to the FA Cup final. Stoke
and Europe
in the latter stages of the Europa League, about to take on Valencia and to give the Spanish a footballing education. Wait for it, guys. You haven't seen anything yet until you've seen Stoke. But I'd have to say the one game that I think this year will be remembered for is the 6-1 Manchester derby.
Yes, indeed. That was slightly unforgettable, actually, wasn't it? Yeah.
Rom, as ever, we've asked people on Twitter to give us their footballing highlights. Do you want to share some with us?
Okay, we've got one guy here who says, as a Man United fan, it's going to be the Champions League final, 19 times Premier League champions, Rooney's goal against City. Of course, that was wiped out in some style later on. And then the 8-2 win, of course, and top scorer being Berbatov. Basically, he listed a whole bunch of Man United highlights there, didn't he? I should have read that one as a Liverpool fan. It felt really bad.
In terms of fairness and objectivity, I think it's only right that you do that, Rom. There's actually been quite a few nominations for Rooney's overhead kick against City. But what about this one? Arsenal beating Barcelona 2-1.
That was obviously going to be a very memorable moment for any Gunner fan, or Gunners fan, Gooner. You know what I mean?
A Gooner. I stick with that one, Rob. Yeah, stick with that one.
That lot. Quite a few people have brought up Barcelona as well. It's hard not to identify Barcelona as being generally a highlight of the year, but in particular, one thing that gets mentioned a lot is them beating Real Madrid over and over again.
Yes. There's also someone here who remembers Fernando Torres' miss against Man U. That was unfortunate because that game could have been so different. It could have been so different, but it's just simply because that is a player whose confidence has taken something of a knock in 2011.
But that miss was brilliant, and it was notable for us at FIFA and here at the studio, because we obviously saw a lot of people recreating that moment in FIFA and putting it on YouTube and stuff like that, spooning and missing and being generally not very good in front of an open goal. But so that was quite memorable for us in particular. Here. Let's mention Coventry City getting relegated before Christmas. I just wanted to bring that one up. He's obviously happy about that, whoever he is. Yeah,
it's really unfair actually, because this is a collection of highlights and lowlights, and I have to say Coventry look pretty doomed right now at the bottom of the Championship. So let's try and end on a high point, Rom, because again you've you've soured the mood somewhat with that
Sorry.
one. Yeah. What about... I've Southampton looking at back-to-back promotions and Sergio Aguero coming to the EPL. Oh, and United losing the Champions League. No name with that one, but 3 reasons there, Rom, surely, that you can find to be cheerful.
I can certainly find reasons for cheering that. Of course, the only problem with Man United going out of the Champions League is that they are now solely focused on the Premier League, which is probably bad news for everyone else. And the same is true for Man City, of course, who, are probably going to be fresher and brighter and more dangerous in the Premier League than ever, which is bad news for people like Liverpool and others in that kind of area. But Southampton obviously doing very well, and actually Sergio Aguero
Aguero. He loves to be known by that,
Of course he does, yeah. But his arrival in the Premier League has definitely been a highlight, and as has the arrival of many of the stars that Moneybags Manchester City have brought in. It has certainly given it a bit of star appeal, shall we say.
And none more so than the real jester in the pack that's made us all smile this year, Mario Balotelli. Why me?
Actually, yeah.
Who knows? But thank heavens it is you, Mario. Well, Rom, I think that brings this festive podcast to a close, our last one of 2011, and we're both looking ahead to the challenges and the delights that lay in store in 2012. We'll end, I think, Rom, not on a song, but on what is, if you don't mind me asking, your New Year resolution.
Not to die.
Again, we've really ended on a high point for this festive podcast. Oh, come all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. So from Romilly Broad, who will be doing his best not to die in 2012, and from me, who will be doing his best to give up sugar, it's good night from him.
Good night. I'll be back in a minute with Podcast Extra, but never mind.
Yes, I know. We'll get to that in a moment. And it's good night from me. But for those of you out there who are fans of Romilly Broad, and long may you be so, here's Romilly Broad with Podcast Extra as he meets, greets and talks to Mike Takla, game designer of FIFA Street.
I'm sat here in a meeting room on the 5th floor of the FIFA studio in Vancouver in what is quite a cold room called the Pentagon. It's got 6 walls, go figure, and sat with me is someone called Mike Takla. Hello, Mike.
Hi.
Who are you?
I'm one of the designers on the new FIFA Street, which is coming out next year.
When have we said when it's coming out, or are we not allowed?
It's sometime in February, I think.
Is it? Don't take our word for that. It could be any time, couldn't it?
Dates aren't my thing.
Yeah, we should probably have known this before we started recording, but never mind. So, Mike, tell us a bit about what you're doing on FIFA Street in particular.
So I'm a designer. Earlier on in the project, I was doing some game modes design. Recently, I've been more involved in the presentation and audio of the game.
Okay, cool. So you've been involved in a lot of the stuff then. So I guess when people... I'm not quite sure what people are thinking about FIFA Street, because obviously we've only just shown a couple of trailers, and obviously Leo Messi being involved and all that sort of stuff. And we've just announced the pre-order thing, which will unlock you some stuff related to Messi.
Yep, you get an extra stadium.
Yeah, and a team of Adidas-related players, including Messi and stuff. So that's all cool, but that's all we've really shown so far. So people's the last memory of FIFA Street would have been the first 3 FIFA Street games, obviously ending in FIFA Street 3. But you didn't work on FIFA Street 3, did you?
No, I've been working on... I moved to Canada in 2007. I've worked on FIFA 08, FIFA 09, FIFA 10 and FIFA 11.
Thanks for that, by the way.
And then I've moved on to FIFA Street since FIFA 11.
Okay, so you were not involved in FIFA Street 3, which means that we can liberally bag on it.
I don't know that any of the current FIFA Street team worked on FIFA Street 3.
Cool. So we're okay to say that it was a bit naff then?
I don't know that it was naff. It's just maybe the direction of the game. Well, what we think is the direction of the game probably wasn't what FIFA fans want. I think FIFA fans want a more authentic football game. Yeah. FIFA Street 3 was very arcadey, cartoony graphics, over the top. So with this version, we've tried to look at real street football and base it more on real street football than an over-the-top version of street football.
So FIFA Street is not going to be Mario Strikers, say, or Sega Soccer Superstars, whatever it's called. There's no lightning bolts.
There's no lightning bolts. There's no game breakers. There's spectacular volleys and back heels and flicks that you'd see in street football. But we haven't made an attempt to exaggerate. Yeah. I think that's... FIFA Street 3 was a fun game, but I think for a lot of people, they were looking for a more authentic experience. So
yeah, and obviously street football itself has, well, it's always been a big thing. Not something that you can turn the TV on and watch necessarily, but it's most people, I say most people, a lot of people play it. And therefore you're going to want something that reflects your own experience of what that means, depending on where you are in the world and stuff. So the concept was very much to go back and replicate that, I guess. So how did you kick that process off? So when you sat down around a table, presumably a bit like this, and said, how do we start this process? What was that, and what kind of research did you do? How did you start going about it?
Yeah, well, we looked at the various ways people play street football, or I don't know what you call mini games of football, basically. Some people play 1 versus 1, some people play 5-a-side, some people play 6 versus 6. We also did a bit of research into futsal, which is it's basically a Brazilian version of 5-a-side, where they play with a smaller ball. It's a little bit heavier, and that's grown in popularity a lot in the last few years. So that was something we wanted to include. There's games, for example, in the Netherlands. They have a game they call Panna, which is I think Dutch for nutmeg. Where basically you beat your opponent by humiliating them, putting the ball through their legs, doing tricks around them, and you'll earn points from that. So that's another thing we've included in the game. So basically, like you say, we sat around the table and talked about everyone's different experiences of what they consider street football to be. Where you'd play street football. So whereas in FIFA Street 3, you might find that you're playing on an oil rig or somewhere where most people haven't played football. In the new FIFA Street, you're playing in car parks or in the local park or in the local 5-a-side centre. And then I guess it's everyone that plays football's goal is to try and be the best player they can be. So kind of the vision for the game was to let the user go from playing in these environments that they'll be familiar with, like a car park or the local sports centre, to growing their team to become a more professional team and starting to play in more professional environments, in stadiums, in futsal tournaments. So that was the inspiration for our main game mode, which is called World Tour. Which has you basically building your own 5-a-side team. And going and playing from your local area. So you can choose from 6 different countries where you want to start. So for example, I would choose to either start playing in Vancouver in Canada or London, England. And I would play tournaments in that local area, with the goal being that my team gets recognised enough that I can then progress to playing on the national stage, so playing across Canada or England. And then once you've been able to win some national tournaments, you then can go and play across Europe, playing in a variety of tournaments across Europe, in Italy, Spain, Germany, France, England. And then once you've kind of clocked the European stage, you move on to the final stage, which is the world stage, playing all around the world in Tokyo, Rio, New York. and the grand finale is playing in the World Futsal Championships in Rio.
Oh, okay.
So that's the goal of the game mode, is to take your team to become World Futsal Champions.
So how does that work in terms of building the team? What's the manic? Oh, it might be quite manic. What's the mechanic around that?
The mechanic is...
what do you start with? It's not just you on your own, is it, to start with?
So the start game is very cool. You basically get like a text message to say, come down to the local park for a kick around. And if you've got friends that have got FIFA Street, what you'd find is that when you go and join that game, it'll be your friends playing in the match with you.
Okay.
And it's just a friendly game. And then after that game, you're asked to build your team. And you can then add players from that game. So if you've got friends playing FIFA Street, you just plop them all in your team.
Okay. That's cool.
If they haven't started playing FIFA Street yet, you can create them yourself.
Okay. And so you craft your little team and off you go. And do those players stay the same throughout the campaign, or do you?
No. Yep. So they grow. So you'll start with a base set of skills, and then you can unlock more skills, the more extravagant stuff as you progress. So you'll see your team basically having more flair as you move through the mode, and you'll unlock extra tricks that you can perform.
So, talking about all that, is that online? Is that offline? How is that working? You say you're bringing your mates into it and stuff. How does that work?
So there's a number of different events you can enter in the mode, and so any tournaments you enter, you can choose whether you want to play them online or offline.
Okay.
Even if you play offline and you're connected online, which most people are nowadays, you'll play against other users' FIFA Street teams. So, like I say, I've chosen to start in Vancouver, Canada. I'll play against other people's teams from Vancouver and Canada.
Oh, all right. Okay.
I'll also, if some of my friends have got teams, they'll pop up in some tournaments. So maybe I get to the final of the Vancouver tournament, and I find Romilly's team is up against me in the final.
Kick your ass. Yeah.
Maybe not.
But yeah, they would, because I'd have spent a lot of time building it, and it'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I've played quite a lot of FIFA Street, so.
Okay. Yeah, and you should have, really, I suppose, working on it and stuff like that. Okay, so and that will just be the same as you move on through the campaign.
Yep. So well, as you move on, as you start getting to kind of the European and world stages, you'll start to see a few more celebrities in there. So maybe in London you might come across Arsenal, or playing in Spain you might see Real Madrid.
Okay.
And then you've also got the option of if you beat some of those what we call licensed teams, real teams.
Yeah.
You get to invite one of their players to join your squad.
So you're gonna have to make the decision. So you've got the opportunity to maybe invite Leo Messi into your team, but you're gonna have to kick one of your actual friends out of your team.
So you can build a squad. I think the squad size is 13.
Oh, okay.
So, but yeah, at some point you will have the choice of, do I want this player or that player? And yeah, it might be a case of, do you want to keep your buddy, or would you rather replace him with the world's best footballer?
So you could kick me out of your team?
For Messi, probably, yeah.
This is just turning into an abusive podcast, this, isn't it?
Well, you're asking me if I'd rather have you or Messi on my team, so...
I suppose it's fairly straightforward, isn't it? So just to move on from the abuse, one of the interesting things about FIFA Street, obviously, is that it's for the first time it's been developed by people like you, who have got a lot of experience and history with the FIFA franchise as a whole, and the FIFA engine is playing a part in it. And it's very much part of this studio's work this time, which is kind of a first, as far as I know. But how do you take something like the FIFA 12 engine and the Impact engine, all that sort of stuff, all that good stuff that people are playing with right now, and turn it into something like FIFA Street? Because it's quite different.
Yeah, but I think you're also in a much better starting position, having the FIFA engine to build off, because FIFA's a great game. It's the best football game out there, as everyone knows.
Of course.
So, yeah, I mean, you take the engine, basically, and you kind of, what do we need to do to make it Street? So they need to rethink positioning and the game becomes a little bit more claustrophobic on the smaller pitch. It's not as simple as you just make a small pitch and whack the players on there. There is a lot to do. And then, obviously, FIFA's goal is to recreate what you see when you watch 11-a-side football.
Yeah.
Whereas when you watch 5-a-side, 6-a-side football or futsal, you'll see a lot more close control, a lot more skill moves. So I think one of the great things the gameplay team did is they added this thing called street ball control, which lets you basically maneuver the ball with your right stick. So basically you get your player into like a standing position, and you can use the right stick to move the ball behind your legs, through your legs. And it creates a very simple mechanic for just beating someone one-on-one without having to learn all the extravagant tricks. I can fake you one way and go the other way, which is, whilst street footballers do pull off a lot of fancy stuff, at the end of the day, Messi beats people 9 times out of 10 by just knocking it past them, faking to go one way and knocking it the other way. So I think the gameplay team felt it was important that they had a simple mechanic for beating people, as well as all the skill moves. It's got all the skill moves from FIFA. And then there's a load more new ones, particularly in-air tricks, so you can flick the ball up and knock it over people's heads. To create all that stuff, they got a few of the I call them freestyle footballers, guys that basically earn a living from juggling the ball in competitions. So we had a couple of the champions. We had the world champion over, and we had him in our mocap studio, motion capture. So we got him in his suit and basically got him to do all the crazy things that he can do, and just watching him do these crazy things was one of the most fun parts of the project for me.
You can't do them yourself?
Well, he's the world champion.
Can you do any of them? Because there is a video that we produced for FIFA 12 featuring Kancho Doskov explaining the new skill moves. He can do them.
Kancho is actually won a freestyle competition in Vancouver and went on to the Canadian finals. And he didn't become Canadian champion, but he's like a semi-professional freestyler.
Right.
So I'm more of your Roy Keane type of player. I'm
brutish.
I'm a ball winner and a keep it simple type of footballer. So I haven't spent the hours Kancho has in his garden practicing his step overs.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Kancho won, Mike 0. Moving on. I can do all of them, of course.
I play football with you, Rom.
Yeah, let's not go there. Yes, so they came into the mocap studio and captured lots of these moves and stuff. Now, is it correct to say that every player in the game will therefore be able to replicate the same skill set as the world champion?
No, there's like a tier system to say that John Terry can do this, whereas Rooney can do this and Messi can do this. So,
so it varies from player to player.
Yeah, I mean, you might find that, I don't know, I mean, when you watch real footballers on telly, they're not doing a whole lot of extravagant stuff, but I think you'd be surprised how much. I mean, I'm more surprised when I'm watching the warm-up before a game, watching Vidic and Ferdinand juggle the ball between each other. It's like you don't realise actually what skills those guys do have. So possibly players can do a little bit more than they could do in real life, but there's definitely an effort to make sure that, you know, players have an appropriate set of skills compared to other players.
So it's within the bounds of reality, which is, of course, one of the overriding themes of FIFA Street, which is to let the extravagance of the sport speak for itself rather than exaggerating it beyond what would be inhuman, I guess.
Yeah. I think a lot of people probably remember doing flip-flaps with Peter Crouch in FIFA Street 3.
Yeah. Well, he can probably do those, can he? They're just very long, languid sort of flip-flaps that go from one side of the court to the other.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't bet on Crouchy being able to do a flip flap. I think he might fall over.
Yeah, you're probably right. So, is it going to be a case of this is just me, right, asking this question because I'm kind of optimistic in this regard. Is it going to be a case of that you can pick it up and play it immediately, button mash, and pull off insane skills and beat everybody. In other words, am I going to be able to sit down and play this with my girlfriend and have her beat me at it like she does at Street Fighter?
No. I think there's definitely been an effort to make the skill moves more accessible to new players. So, but that's mostly the work's been on making them more responsive and making sure the player does pull off the skill move. When FIFA can be a little bit harsh at times.
Yeah.
Where you think you've done it right and maybe you're just a few degrees off. So that's more the type of thing they've tried to address in Street.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, wiggling the stick, you might be able to pull off some cool moves. But definitely the person that is able to time their skill moves is going to beat the person that's just hoping for the best.
So I'll beat her every time.
Maybe. Is your timing's good? Or?
Yeah, I'm going to kick her ass. If I can ever get her to play any video games at all, that'll be a bit of a victory anyway. But because
I thought you meant beat me.
I'll be able to beat you.
Oh, your
easy.
girlfriend. I'd hope so.
Yeah. No, I mean she's the real challenge, if I'm honest. So you know, because there's one thing. I mean, it was interesting. We were watching Gary Patterson, who's obviously what's his job?
He's creative director.
Creative director, and people will know that name obviously from FIFA's past, where he was gameplay producer and so on for previous FIFAs, and he's taken the helm in that regard on FIFA Street this time. And anyway, he gave a bit of a demo yesterday for loads of people, including myself, and he played. I'm not sure who he played.
He played Sid, who's the line producer.
Oh yes,
FIFA
so
Street.
Sid Misra, who you will be seeing in lots of videos fairly soon when we start releasing those. But I thought I was watching them play, and they were putting off these incredible overhead kind of moves and all this sort of stuff. I think they might have been trying to show off a little bit or something. I was watching that thinking, I'm never going to be able to do that.
I don't think that's true. Gary, obviously, you know, Sid's not the best gamer out there, so if you saw
really,
Sid...
you've just outed him. Okay.
Whereas obviously Gary, being so involved in the gameplay, knows all the controls, but Sid's been more on the game mode side, so the fact that he can do those means that just from playing the game modes, he's learnt to pick up the tricks. So
yeah. Cool. So, and there are other game modes that we can't talk about, particularly online stuff. There's a reason we can't talk about that, and that's because we're not allowed, because we haven't announced any of it yet. But we have found out about World Tour mode here a bit, and we found out a bit of the origin of the gameplay mechanics and stuff like that. And no doubt, as the days and the weeks go by after Christmas, we'll be hearing a lot more. And maybe, when we're free to talk about this stuff, you could join us for another podcast.
Sure, yeah.
Would you be up for that?
Yeah, I think demo's out early next year, so...
We can talk all we want then, can't we? That'll be fine. Probably. Well, we'll see. Yeah, we shall return anyway to this... well, not this meeting room, it's too cold. We'll go to a different one that's got less noisy people outside. I think they were NHL-related marketing people, by the way. If you heard that noise... That was them getting excited about something presumably quite trivial. Probably a picture that someone found on the internet, and they're all going yee-haw and NHL style all over it. They weren't FIFA people, and I do apologise for them. That just happens to be the corner of the office that we've ended up in. We will return with more FIFA Street goodness post-Christmas. But in the meantime, have a very good Christmas and start saving up for a bit of FIFA Street. In it. So thank you very much, and we'll see you later.
Cheers.